Hello, my name is Chuck Trotwine. I want to spend a couple minutes here, or about 20 minutes, talking about using Scratch to teach mathematics, in particular using Scratch to model how to make arrays in math classrooms, grades. I can see you can use this in grades 2 on up through grades 5. Okay, again, this is not so much about coding, but the application of coding as a tool for generalizing and applying knowledge, and hopefully reaching the transformational levels of the SAMR model. And those would be modification and redefinition. And again, in doing so, hoping to turn the Bloom's taxonomy upside down, building on the lower levels here to give more time to the higher levels of generalization and applying and application. Okay, so this isn't going to be perfect, so just bear with me. One thing that we do want to do is talk just a little bit about what happens when we use Scratch to teach mathematics, were some of the guidelines that I like to follow. Number one is start simple, work complex. So you want to move from a very concrete model to a more generalized or abstract model. And I'm going to actually show you this here in just a second. Remember that the focus is on content, which is the end, and not coding, which is the means to the end. In this case, coding is just another tool teachers can use to teach mathematics. You want to capitalize on students' code.org experience, assuming they have some. It will come in handy as you're trying to work through some of these examples with your students in the classroom. And of course, if all else fails, ask a student and they'll be able to help you out. Okay, so let's see. In Scratch, let me kind of clear my board here. In Scratch, what we want to do, and I'm going to just use this sort of as a whiteboard here. Here, of course, is Scratch. And let's say here's the stage. So let's put Scratch on the stage here. Hopefully, yeah, we go. Scratch is on the stage. Okay, so Scratch is going to start somewhere in the middle of the stage, which is, of course, 0, 0. We talked about that in some other examples screencast just a little bit ago. But what we want to do is we want Scratch to make an array. And like I said, we want to start simple, work complex, and work with a very concrete model, then generalize that model into making arrays of any size that would, of course, fit on the stage. Okay, so let's see. First thing, what we have to do is teach Scratch how to make a square. So we teach Scratch how to make a square. Then once we teach Scratch how to make a square, then we can make an array, say an array of 3 rows by 1 column. Okay, and that's a little task that we're going to do here once we get into Scratch. An array 3 by 1. Okay, 3 rows by 1 column. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Again, let's see, to get to Scratch, I'd like to just Google Scratch here. And once we Google Scratch, I'm not sure if I did that right. No, I didn't. Here we go. It's the first link here usually. I'm already signed into my account, Old Math Teacher. You don't have to have an account to use Scratch. It is handy because you can save your stuff. I'm going to go ahead and create. And we're going to create this thing from scratch. Scratch from scratch. Little Scratch joke here. And we're going to call this Arrays Screencast. Okay. All right. First thing I always have students do is make Scratch a little bit smaller so he fits on the stage a little bit better here. Okay. Working very concrete, stepwise. Again, we're starting from scratch. We want to use probably the move commands, the motion commands to make a part of the array, so make the square, and that we use to build the array with. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go right to the students code.org experience. Hopefully they know how to make a square. We're going to repeat something 4 times, and then what we're going to repeat is moving, oops, put that in there, moving in 20 steps, Scratch steps. Then in between each step, in between making each side of the square, we want to turn a nice right angle, which is 90 degrees. Again, 2nd grade, we might have to have a discussion about that, 3rd grade, but they're they'll get the hang of a 90-degree turn being a right angle, a square corner. Okay. All right, so let's see. We need to put the pen down. Remember, Scratch has a pen strapped to his backside here. And see what happens. There you go. I made a little square. Step 1, making an array is to make one part of the array or an element of the array, which is in this case a square. You don't have to use square. You can use circles. You can actually stamp the sprite, but that gets a little bit complicated. This is something they understand, students understand pretty easily. And hopefully, maybe you've even played with this to make polygons. This is a little bit of a side here, but check this out. Oh, geez, what am I doing? Okay, this might be a little bit more than 20 minutes now. All right, so this makes a polygon of size, what, 20? And so we have move, let's see what happens here. Okay, this makes a little polygon. In this case, the polygon happens to be a square. Now, if we wanted to make a pentagon, what we'd have to do is, well, let's go with a triangle. All right, so we would say repeat 3. You have to remember that the angle that Scratch turns is the exterior angle. Okay, so in order to make a triangle, he's going to have to turn a little bit more in order to kind of close in that triangle here. So I'm going to say it's 120 degrees because I've done this before and I know. Students you might want to kind of lead students to that answer. That's what I usually do. Okay, but one thing you have to remember is when you make a polygon, and of course polygon, that's what the pirate says when his parrot flies away, right? Polygon. Okay, just think about it later on. All right, but anyways, so the number of times that you repeat turning the angle has to be 360 degrees. So 3 times 120 is 360. And of course we said that 4 times 90, which makes a pentagon, is 360. And so if we want to make a hexagon, of course this has to be 60. And that makes a hexagon. All right, so pretty cool. Again, working with very concrete examples. Let's go ahead and let's say repeat this 7 times. Oh, geez. What are we going to do here? We have to find some number, 360 divided by 70. Well, Scratch is very good at doing math, so I think I've said that before. We can take this guy here, the division operator, and we can tell Scratch what we're looking for. We're looking for 360 divided by 7. And sure enough, then hopefully we make a 7 gong. There you go. Ta-da. Okay, very cool. But we didn't want to do all that. That was a side. I got distracted. Sorry very much. Let's go ahead and move 20. Let's get rid of this. Not to be confusing here. We want to turn 90 degrees. All right, we need to clear the screen now because I messed it all up and put clear up here. I don't want to show everyone that one there yet. Okay, now we make one square. Now we have to make a column, right? We're going to make a 3 by 1 array. All right, so we make one square, and now what we want to do is move Scratch up to make the the next square. Oh, that's pretty easy. So we're going to go to motion. Instead of turning Scratch to moving 20 steps, I like to use the change Y by. Again, when you change Y, you change the Scratch's vertical position in a positive direction or a negative direction. I'm going to change Y by, let's see, 20, right? Because that's the side of the square. And hey, you know what? Then I'm just going to repeat that. How many times? I'm going to repeat that. I want a 3 by 1 array, so I want this 3 rows, and let's see what happens. 1, 2, 3. Bingo. I got a 3 by 1 array. That easy. Okay, now, suppose, okay, we want a 3 by what? 3 by 5 array. Okay, 3 by 5. All right, so 3 rows by 5 columns. Okay. All right, first thing I don't want to lose sight over is that this 3 here is the number of rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Control. I'm sorry. I'm going to Control click on this. I'm going to add a comment, and I'm just going to say this is the number of rows. All right. And that way it helps me remember that's what that 3 is. Okay. Now we're looking for columns. Okay, so I'm going to clear this. Doesn't really matter where Scratch is. I'm going to put them right here for now. I'm going to go ahead and just draw those 3 columns now. I'm sorry, 3 rows now. Now what we need to do is move Scratch down, then move them across in order to make the next column. Right? He already knows how to make 1 column. All right, all we have to do is get Scratch into position to make the next column. Okay, so that's going to be a little bit of a chore. Let's see, we can always change Y back. Okay, so let's go ahead and change Y to, let's see, in this case it's going to be 1, 2, 3 20s. And we're moving in a negative direction, right? Negative direction. So let's say negative 20s, and we're moving 3 times. Now, just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to go right to the operators, because we might not always want to make a 3x1 array. Remember, we're working with a very concrete, specific example here. But we might want to make an array with maybe 5 rows or 7 rows or whatever. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to use the multiplication operator here. And we're going to change Y by negative 20 because we want them to go down, times, in this case, 3 rows. So we have 3 here, meaning rows, which is here. And I might want to put a comment on there too, but right now I'm not. Okay. All right, so so that moves Scratch down. Let's go ahead and check it out. Clear, makes 3. There, he moves them down. Now all we have to do is move them forward, and I can use just a simple move command for that. I could use change X by, but since he's already pointing this direction, yeah, I'm just going to keep moving 20 steps. Okay, all right, so now let's see what happens. I'm going to clear, move him down here. He's in position to do the next column. Well, that's just repeating all this, right? Okay, so let's go up here to Control. I'm going to repeat this. I'm going to gobble up all these commands here. I'm going to repeat how many columns? I'm going to repeat 5 columns. Let's see now. There he goes. Check him out. 3x5 array. All right, 5 is the number of columns, right? So I'm going to Control click here, add a comment. We're going to say number of columns. Cool. Okay. All right. Now, suppose now we want to make a, let's say, 8 by 12 array. Okay, let's clear that out here. Clear. Okay. Now, what did I forget to do? All right. I've changed my columns to 12, changed my rows to 8. I also have to change this 3 to 8, remember, because that's times the number of rows, right? So I'm going to probably forget that at some point, so I'm going to put a comment on there. So add a comment. So we're going to say times number of rows. Okay. Okay, times number of rows. All right, well, let's go ahead and try. Lots of work that little guy's doing here, making a 8 by 12 array. But he's doing it, and he's very happy doing it. It's always nice to have a Scratch do our work for us. Very cool. All right, so here we have a structure to make any size array that we want. It's just, again, we worked from a very concrete example, build it step by step, work to a very generalized, abstract example of making an array. Okay, one more thing, we can make this just a little bit better by using variables. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to change this around a little bit so Scratch will ask what size array that we want, and then we would type in the number of columns and rows, and then Scratch would go ahead and do that. But in order to do that, we have to define some placeholders for variables. All right, so I'm going to define a variable called rows, and I'm going to make a variable called columns. I said the word define, make, same difference. Okay, so let's clear this. Now, other than having Scratch ask, okay, for the number of rows and the number of columns, we're almost done, because all we have to do is pop in rows here, because that's the number of rows, and rows is a variable that holds that number. Right now rows is 0 because we haven't assigned a value to rows other than 0. And then columns goes up here, right? Now we have to get Scratch to ask number of rows. And while we're up here, I'm going to have them ask number of columns, but we have to do something with that after we type it in. And what we're going to do with that is go to data, and we're going to set each one of those variables to whatever the user types in after Scratch asks for it. Okay, so this is going to be set rows to what? Well, whatever the answer is. So let's go back to sensing and click and drag answer in here, and let's put Scratch over here someplace. All right, let's go ahead and try it. Rows, I'm going to go back to 3, columns 5, and there we go. Bingo. 3 by 5. So here we have a tool for making any size array that we want. And of course, we can use this to talk about multiplication. We can talk about area. We can talk about perimeter. All kinds of fun stuff. Okay, well, I hope this helps, and I'm not sure what we're going to talk about next time. I think we're going to talk about creating games in Scratch that can help with the teaching of mathematics. Okay, thanks and good luck.